Hey friends, welcome back to the cabin, and today I'm going to be cooking from 4 different points of my pantry. So what am I talking about when I refer to the 4 points of my pantry? Actually, it's going to be everything at my disposal to make sure that I have plenty of good nutritious food to provide for my family. And what that's going to include is my home canned products that I put up, either water bath or pressure canned, the dehydrated products that I put up, the fresh from the garden that I actually am able to harvest as needed, and also the purchased products from the grocery store. So let me get you over here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's talk about the 4 points. Number 1 is going to be the home preserved. And as you can see here, I've got some roast that I preserved this past summer. And also, it can also incorporate some of the stuff that you use kind of on a sideline. Now this is ghee right here that we produce here from our milk cow. It's made from butter that comes from Lily. And also right here we have some harvested rainwater that I'm going to use when I cook my rice, but I'll get to the rice in just a second. Now right here, this is dehydrated bell peppers, so this incorporates my dehydrated. That's going to be used, we're actually making what I call green pepper beef. So we will get this started with the beef and the bell pepper. And then we're going to go on to our purchased products, which is going to be the rice. Of course, I purchased the rice. And then we're going to move over to the fresh. And I actually harvested this asparagus first thing this morning. So we're going to also include that. Okay, so I've got to go over here and get my bell peppers in some water. They have to reconstitute for about a half an hour. When I get that done, then we'll get back and we'll start cooking. Now, this is going to be a quick meal. It's not going to take very long to put this all together and get it on the table, but we're going to start with the one that takes the longest first, and that's going to be the rice. So that ought to give you an indication as to how fast this is going to come together. That's the beauty of home canned, pressure canned, water bath canned foods. They're already cooked. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to start with our rice, 1.5 cups of our harvested rainwater. And I start with a cool pot. You don't want to start with hot water when you cook your rice. 3/4 cup of our rice. And then I will add some ghee that will kind of help keep the rice fluffy and not sticky. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. And while I've got this out, I'm going to go ahead and add some over here to that skillet because that's where our beef is going. Okay, once your rice gets cooking, you don't want to stir it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on that and let it do its thing. The next thing that we want to do, and I've also got a bonus that I didn't tell you about a while ago that's going to go in this pot, but it cooks up really fast too. And it'll be kind of a side or maybe a dessert, whichever way you want it to go. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and turn this on and start melting the ghee in there. Now I did go ahead and drain the beef broth because I didn't want the juice in there. So that's why I put the ghee, so that it won't stick. All right, so I'm going to show you the reconstituted bell pepper. That's what it looks like right there, but I will overlay another picture of it dry so you can kind of see the comparison between the dry and the reconstituted. All right, so our ghee, that's getting melted really well. Now this is, let's see if you can see that. Yes, look at the beauty of that. That is a beautiful golden color. Now this is from our milk cow Lily. Those of you that have been with me a while know all about Lily. Okay, so we're going to put about a tablespoon in there. That's for the asparagus. There is a little bit of liquid still in there, but that'll cook off. And we're also going to deglaze the pan as we cook. Now you see this beef is already completely done. So all we're basically doing is warming it. We're going to warm it a little bit. While that's cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and drain the bell peppers. Okay, so our rice, oh yeah, it's doing good. We're going to turn it down to a low simmer. Keep everything kind of low and slow because it's not going to take it long. I'm going to go ahead and put us a little bit of sea salt. Now when I cook, when I can, I don't season. I put a half a teaspoon of salt in my pints and a teaspoon of salt in my quarts, but it's really not enough to make a lot of difference. You could absolutely leave it out. It's not necessary. It doesn't have anything to do with the preserving. But I tend to like less salt. My husband tends to like a little bit more. So I just prefer to keep it less salt. That way he can add to it. I'm going to turn that rice down just a little bit more. I love this old gas stove. I can do so much with it. It's an old pilot lit stove. Even the oven is pilot lit. And the whole purpose of doing this collaboration is to show someone how they can take what they have in their pantry and put a complete, nutritious, delicious meal on their table. Okay, so that's warm and good. My butter is melted great. We're going to go ahead and put our asparagus in there. And actually what we're just doing is just braising it. Go ahead and turn that back up. Actually, I had turned it off, so let's turn it on. Now this is straight out of the garden this morning, and that's why when you look at it, you don't see uniform sizes because it came right out of my asparagus bed, and you see some fat ones and some skinny ones. That doesn't mean that they were old. The fat ones were not left there a long time. That's just some of the older stock, I guess you could call it, from the raised bed, and it just produces fatter stalks. What you find in the grocery store is a lot more uniform. So, but this is homegrown, and that's why it's not as uniform as what you'd find in the grocery store. All right, so I'm going to sprinkle a little sea salt on there, just a little bit. Now that salt, that butter was unsalted, so adding a little bit of salt's not hurting at all. This is so easy. Asparagus is so easy, and it is so good for you. I'm going to turn that beef off for just a minute. Let this kind of catch up. And you can see here, if you've never eaten asparagus or never tried to cook it, this is probably one of the simplest ways. Now, a lot of times I'll roast it in the oven with a little bit of ghee or butter or olive oil, same way with a little bit of sea salt. And that's the two ways that we do. Now the roasting it, we like it because we'll let it cook a little bit longer, and the smaller pieces even get crispy. Okay, so what's going in this pot right here, which is the bonus, is stewed apples. We're going to make stewed apples. I had some apples that were kind of getting soft, and they needed to be used. And I discovered them a while ago, so I thought, well, let's get those going, and that'll be our little dessert or an extra side. Okay, so I've got about 1/3 of a cup of water in this pot here. Let me turn that down. We're going to put those apples in there like that. We're going to put 1/3 cup of sugar. That was 3 medium-sized apples, but you can wing it, anything you've got, just make do with it. I think I better grab a pot holder before I grab that. And so for the butter and the apples, I'm going to use probably maybe 2 tablespoons. We'll see. We just wing it. That's a generous 2 tablespoons right there. We're going to turn that pot on. Okay, so that's all we do. I'm going to turn that down just a tad. There we go. These little enamel pots are thin, so they'll heat up pretty quick. So what we're doing, actually, we've got the sugar and we've got the butter, and all of that will kind of cook together. And you don't want to cook this very long because your apples will get super soft. Now, we were talking about dehydrating a while ago. Let me give this a quick stir. If you have some dehydrated apples, that would be wonderful. You could reconstitute them and you could turn them into stewed apples just like that. So, but I just didn't want them to go to waste. That was something purchased at the store, and we're still talking about our 4 points. We've got home canned, home dehydrated, home grown, and purchased from the store. Oh my goodness. If you could smell this, it smells delicious. All right, so let's check our rice. Oh, it's looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the beef back on. Because everything's going to be done pretty quick. And we're just going to stir this around. Just a little bit, not much, because this meat's already cooked. You can see there was like even a little bit of red bell pepper in there. Oh man, it smells so good. We're going to let it just kind of simmer and braise just a minute or two to kind of help the flavors mix with the bell peppers and the beef. Go ahead and give the asparagus a stir. Asparagus is known to be a cancer fighter. Very nutritious. And this has got to be a superhero this morning because it came straight from the garden just a couple of hours ago. So you know it's loaded with all kind of vitamins and good things. All right, let's check that. Oh yeah, the butter's starting to melt down. Let's check our rice. It's off now. It'll finish steaming right there with the lid on it. Good deal. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some Bragg's liquid amino, or if you have soy sauce, whichever you prefer, and we'll kind of deglaze the pan just a little bit. Oh yes, add a little bit more flavor. Check that real quick. Let me turn that down. Everything's coming together at just about the same time, which is perfect. Okay. I'm going to put a lid on this. Go ahead and turn it off. I'm just going to let it steam a little bit. Let those flavors kind of mix together. I think our asparagus is done. Yes. The asparagus is done. Turn that off. The rice is off. The apples are cooking. And the meal is basically complete. So we're going to plate it up, and I'll be back with you in just a bit, and we'll talk about it. All right, so I'm back for just a second before we plate up because I forgot to tell you something that you need to do with the stewed apples. All right, so when they're done, you're going to put about 1.5 teaspoons, or if you're like me, a lot more than that, of vanilla. Now, even the vanilla was something that was produced here. That is homemade vanilla extract. And it's just wonderful. If you've never tried that, you've got to try it. It's wonderful. All right, so let's get this plated up, and I'll be right back with you. You enjoyed this video and me showing you how you can take things that you have at home and put them together and be able to put a quick, delicious meal that's good for your family on the table. Part of what this is all about is to stress the importance of being prepared with a pantry. And if you're not familiar with that, I wanted to recommend to you one of the channels that has actually been a sponsor of this collaboration, and that is Mary of Mary's Nest, and she has a complete playlist, very thorough, on how to start your own preparations, prepper pantry, for as little as $5 a week. If you can spare $5 a week, then you can get started putting some food aside. And I also want to thank the other ladies that invited me in on this collaboration, and that is Vicki of Vicki's Country Homestead, Lori and Danny of Whippoorwill Holler, and Katie, I believe is her name, at Heritage Ways. And I had a blast doing this, and I hope that you enjoyed watching everything come together, and it encourages you to give it a try. But one thing that I do want to remind you of, don't ever forget that your Heavenly Father loves you. And we'll see you on the next video. God bless.